Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. I am your host, Gordy Rush, and this is the show that talks all about the things that drive Louisiana business and industry. We're happy to be here, and with us is my co-host, Tim Johnson. Tim, we've got a special guest today.
We certainly do. A young man that's become a really good friend. He is a key player in industry in our state, particularly in the chemical industry. Patrick Riley is the Chief Governmental Affairs Officer and Legal Counsel for the Louisiana Chemical Association. We're going to have a great conversation today. Brother, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. I'm very happy to be here. So
we're glad you are. And as you know, we sit here today with the beginning of the legislative session. Your responsibility, as I mentioned, is critical, and we got a lot of good things to talk about. But we always like to start, Patrick, with a little bit of background. Tell us about your education and the path that led you to the Louisiana Chemical Association.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I do have a little bit of an interesting story. I started out, born and raised Baton Rouge, been here for my entire life, but my educational career started out at LSU as a chemical engineering undergraduate. I did that primarily because I always liked math and science. I particularly liked chemistry, and I also wanted to be able to have a job in Louisiana. I always had an idea that I would go to law school. That was always in the back of my mind, but then that's what I did next. I went to law school at LSU Law, and then after that I had an opportunity to work with a guy named Jim Harris at Harris DeVille, and I interned with him.
A mentor to a lot of us.
A mentor to many, and certainly a mentor to me. Yeah. I met Jim Harris, had an opportunity to work with him, and he sort of introduced me to this world of lobbying and policy, and then actually this job, I found out about it through another friend and mentor, Dan Bournet, who was not only friends with Jim, but who I knew very well. And he said, look, you're a chemical engineer and a lawyer. You know policy. You like to talk. This is your job. Yeah. This is the job for you. If you could make a job that fit you perfectly, this is it. So I've been with LCA now for over 2 years, a little over 2 years, and it's been great. It's been a fantastic transition, and I really, really enjoy it.
We joked before we started the show today that if you went in the lab and built your job, you'd build Patrick Riley, so very, very well suited for that. I think most of the folks who might be watching this podcast or listening to this podcast would clearly understand what the LCA is and what it does, but for those who might not be as fully aware, give us a little overview. What's its mission, its membership, its leadership? Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So LCA is Louisiana, now it's Chemistry Association, Louisiana Chemistry Association, and the simplest way to put this is we represent the companies that are driving Louisiana forward. You said that at the top of the show. That's who we represent. We represent the big companies that you think of that you want your kids to work at. The major chemical manufacturers operating in the state, who are doing great things, developing new technologies, fueling not only Louisiana, but the country and the world. That's who LCA is. Additionally, we have LCIA, which is Louisiana Chemistry Industrial Alliance, and it is exactly that. It is an alliance of businesses that support our chemical industry. That includes your industrial contractors, your boots on the ground, the people that get it done. They're turning wrenches, fitting pipes, and all of the support businesses, even ancillary businesses you might not think of, like law firms and banks and food supply places. Anything that supports our broader industry is a member of LCIA, or can be a member of LCIA. LCA has about 70 members. LCIA has about 700 members. Wow. And we hope that number continues to go up. But broadly speaking, we are the voice, the unified voice of the chemical industry. That's how Dan Bournet would say it.
Exactly.
So, yes, sir.
If you would, let's talk about, you've touched on the importance of this chemistry industry here. Go a little bit deeper into the communities and, some of these 70 partners, and then get to the 700 and the economic impact they have for this state.
Absolutely. So at LCA, we fully understand the deep impact that the chemical industry has on this state, right? It is the largest industry in the state. I'll give you some quick metrics here. We employ our broad industry, which would encompass those LCIA folks as well, employs over 300,000 people in Louisiana. We represent 20% of the state taxes. We represent 20% of state wages, 25% of the state GDP, over $1 billion a year in local taxes. Mm-hmm. this industry is so linked with Louisiana. It's so critical that we're here. And frankly, Louisiana is also perfect for this industry. Louisiana is uniquely positioned as a state that has natural resources, that has access to the Gulf. We've got New Orleans, we've got all these ports, we've got the Mississippi River. We've got a variety of things that make Louisiana uniquely positioned to be a leader in energy and in industry in the United States and also in the world, right? And we are leading in that way. Many of the Gulf states along are competing for business with Louisiana, but we're doing a really good job.
Yeah.
And LCA's position is that we want to continue to create policies that are clear and predictable and allow for us to continue to win that business, right? We love Texas, we love other states, but we love Louisiana more.
Yes, we do.
And we want to bring those businesses here. And there's a lot of good news on that front, right? We've in the past year, we've seen over $70 billion worth of projects announced, industrial related. Just a couple weeks ago, Shintech, which is one of our members, $3.4 or $3.8 billion expansion. That's huge.
Yep.
Later this year, BASF has a $1 billion expansion at their Geismar facility. Talco had a major expansion recently. I mean, there's a lot of really great news coming to our sector that we're very excited about from an economic perspective.
I want to follow up on that just a minute, Patrick, because we talk about the economic impact that these facilities have, but there's also been a great focus by the LCA recently on the local communities as well and being engaged there. If you think about these major employers, they allow their employees to be the baseball coaches and the basketball coaches and the deacons in the church and their volunteers across the state. And then on top of that, these plants do millions of dollars in contributions to nonprofits and to charities in their communities. So when you think about the huge economic impact that the industry has, it's very significant in our state. But I think the community and the volunteer impact and the contribution impact that a lot of these facilities have can be just as meaningful. And the LCA is doing a much better job being engaged at that local level.
Tim, look, you're dead on, and I will say that our president and CEO he doesn't like to be called the new president and CEO because he's been here about a year now. But David Cresson, when he came in, one of his first thoughts was, we got to get out in these local communities. As LCA, our members already do a great job of that. Our members have been great corporate citizens and been involved in their communities. As you mentioned, set up all these educational programs, contributed to the local communities in a variety of ways, both manpower and money, for years. Many of these companies that we represent have operated in Louisiana for over 50 years. I mean, that's a significant long-term presence. And you don't get to do that unless you're a good corporate citizen with the community around you, right? But LCA, we based in Baton Rouge. We spend a lot of our time in Baton Rouge. We focus a lot on the legislative session and other stuff happening here as our hub. But one of the first things David said is, we've got to get in the local communities. And so over the past year, we have really been amping up efforts so that LCA is as good of a corporate citizen in our communities as our members are, right? Yeah. We're getting out there. We want to be a resource. LCA not only as a public-facing entity, but as an informational resource. We've been to all these community advisory panels. We've been to Rotary clubs. We've been to local chambers, right? If you want us to come speak and talk to you about anything, if you have questions about what we do behind the fences, what we do in our facilities, the great products we create, the people we employ, whatever those questions are, we want to be available and answer them, right? And we're doing that more and more and more. We have a plan continue. We want to get folks to be able to tour plants that have never been inside a plant. We want you to be able to come and see them, right? We want to open up the windows, let everybody come in, take a look, and be a resource again to those communities.
David's charge, and I think that leads us to the next set of questions we want to talk about here, but David's charge coming in a year ago was be no less effective at the state capitol, but be much more engaged at the local community, and you guys have done a great job at that. But speaking of being engaged at the state capitol and the work that the LCA has traditionally done there, I think it's safe to say, and you might not want to admit this, but you are one of the recognized leaders in the lobbying business at the state capitol, right? People respect you. They respect your knowledge, your effort, your work. But in some circles, the word lobbyist has been connected to negative connotations.
Sure.
Why are those people wrong?
So, I really like this question actually because you hear that a lot. There's negative connotations associated with lobbyists. People, you tell them you're a lobbyist and they're like, oh, geez, okay. The reality is the way that I view lobbying is it's a problem solver, right? The best lobbyists are good listeners, good learners, and good problem solvers. Because what we do on a daily basis, when you really think about it, is I listen to my members and their concerns. I listen to the legislators and their concerns. I learn up on the subject matter, and then I try to bridge that gap between all of the people who are interested in a particular piece of legislation. I try to help us get to a point of commonality, a point where we can move forward and do something really good for the entire state, right? Not just the membership, but everyone overall. So lobbying, again, to me, is just problem solving. I told you, I'm a chemical engineer, right? And I'm a lawyer. So I'm a chemical engineer. I like to solve problems. I like to get in the weeds to understand what's going on here, to understand why people think the way they think, to understand what your reasoning is for wanting a particular policy. And then I want to help solve that problem. And then as a lawyer, what I want, and this is a nerdy thing to say, but it really is true, I care about policy. I care about policy for the sake of policy. I want us to have good policy in the state that's clear, easy to understand, and predictable, because that is good for everyone. Everyone wants to know what the law is so they can follow it, right? That's individuals, that's businesses, and the closer we get to that in the state of what is the law, what do I need to do, and how do I do it, the better everyone's going to be.
Well, part of what folks like to do when they criticize lobbyists, and particularly maybe criticize a lobbyist for industry, is, oh, you're just protecting these big billion-dollar corporations. And what I say, Patrick, is no. You're protecting the jobs and the economic benefit that these folks have in the local community, right? Because it is those local employees who are engaged in their communities. It is that business providing, in some cases, 85% of a parish's tax base. That's who you're protecting.
That's right. And look, I will put it in a way, this is a quote from maybe a little bit jumbled, but a quote from Dan Bornay, right? And he said this, and this really stuck with me, and I think it's absolutely true. We don't represent pipes and pumps and reactors and catalyzers. We represent people, right? Our industry employs a lot of people, and ultimately, they live and they work in these communities. They go every day to these facilities. They make great things that impact our lives for the positive on a daily basis, not only us in Louisiana, but us, again, in the United States and across the world, right? We represent those people. We represent those jobs. We represent those who are driving Louisiana and the world forward, the innovators, the builders, the doers. That's who we represent, right? So if you choose to view it in that way, that's up to you. But that's how I think about it.
Well, before I turn it back over to my co-host for a couple of questions, I want to get into some of that policy, right?
Yeah.
Because what you do at the state capitol can be boiled down to you are trying to defeat bad legislation that hurts those local jobs and that local tax base, and you're trying to pass good legislation that would sort of enhance that local employment and that local tax base. So let's talk about a few items that I know you're going to be focused on in this legislative session. Now let's start with carbon capture and sequestration. That has been the hot topic for industry over the course of the last couple of years. Give us a brief primer on where we are and some of the things we might be looking at there.
Okay, carbon capture. What is carbon capture? That's where I want to start here. Carbon capture is the safe, permanent storage of carbon dioxide underground. That's what it is. It's that simple. From a chemistry perspective, let's talk about what carbon dioxide is. It is a gas that I am literally breathing out right now. It is around all of us. It's one of the most prevalent and naturally available gases in the world, right? And we are taking that gas and we are putting it underground. And you might say it's a hot button topic, right? But it's not new. We have been using, injecting CO2 underground for the purpose of enhanced oil recovery, which is basically, quick primer on that, is there's oil in the ground, but it doesn't come up in the big geyser that you see on TV, right? It is stuck underground. The way we get it out, we flood the underground with carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide stays down, the oil comes up, right? We've been doing that for 50 years in some cases, right? And this is just an extension of that. The new carbon capture and sequestration is just the next extension of using EOR, right? Why are we doing this? Let's talk about that for a second. there is a significant global demand for low or lower carbon products. You may hear them talked about as blue products, right? Two big ones are ammonia and hydrogen. So you'll hear about ammonia, and blue hydrogen. There's several projects announced related to blue ammonia and blue hydrogen already in the state, which are incredible projects that we're very excited about. The quickest way to get to low carbon is by doing carbon sequestration. That's why it's very attractive. It's not the only way. There's lots of other ways our companies are pursuing lower carbon emissions, doing things smarter, greener, cleaner, better. But carbon capture is one of the ways to do it very quickly. Louisiana is very well positioned to be a host for it due to its geology. And that's why so many businesses have announced in the past year. That's why so many businesses want to come to Louisiana right now, is because we've been granted something called primacy. I'll tell you what that is briefly as well. Primacy is basically the federal government has authority over certain things. The states have authority over what the federal government delegates to the states. So over, in general, these natural resources and carbon sequestration, the federal government has authority. They have chosen to delegate that authority to a few trustworthy states with the experience and knowledge base to be able to implement their own policies effectively. Louisiana is one of those. And it's not a mistake. It wasn't just a random, let's put a lottery and figure out which state we should pass this authority to. It's because we have so many pipelines in the state. We have so many industrials in the state. We have, throughout the past 100 years of Louisiana's history, developed all of these things responsibly in such a way that now the federal government feels that we are able to develop this new technology responsibly. So that's kind of where we are in a very broad sense. This year at the legislature, there are at least 40 bills regarding carbon capture. Many of them are in one way or the other putting additional restrictions on people's ability to do carbon injection. And many of those bills, if passed, would be a significant inhibition on the projects coming to the state, right? Many of these announced projects that say we're here are dependent upon carbon capture. Right. And if we can't do it in the state, or if it becomes too arduous to do, those projects are also going to go away, as are those jobs, as those companies.
That investment seeks certainty, and if we're not certain about their processes and their ability to do what they need to do to produce those low-carbon products in this state,
That's right.
They'll go to Texas or, even worse, China or other places around the world.
That's right.
Spend about 2 minutes or less here on some of these other topics that you guys are going to be watching, right? Workforce, huge for the Louisiana chemistry industry today. Taxes, some of the other things that you might be paying close attention to, just briefly.
Absolutely. I will start with workforce because that's one of my most favorite topics to talk about. It is something that is critically important, as we've already discussed, for all of these new projects coming in. We need the qualified workforce, right? And that involves starting as early as elementary, middle school. I've been to some great demonstrations put on by third graders, right? And we're talking about getting them involved in STEM, showing them a pathway, connecting them with resources to get to, if you want to be a welder, we'll show you how to be a welder. If you want to be an engineer, we'll show you how to be an engineer. If you want to do anything else in the STEM field or in an industry that supports our industry, we want to connect you with the people and resources to get that done, right? And our companies are investing in a lot of solutions to that effect. We have in Donaldsonville, CF built this early childhood learning center. We also have River Parishes Community College partnered with a guy from Turner named Patrick Lawless, who teaches people how to weld at night, night school. There's a lot of great initiatives that we're really supportive of. And Louisiana, we're working with LA Works, we're working with the Department of Economic Development, we're working with the Governor's Administration. Workforce is a priority not only for the state, but certainly for LCA. And we're really looking at some great bills this year that we think will move the needle, will help provide people better opportunities to get these necessary skills and strengthen our workforce base that we already have and prepare for all of this great new projects coming.
We got thousands of high-paying new jobs coming to this state, and we want local citizens, people who live in the communities around these facilities, to be eligible for, trained for, prepared for these high-paying jobs that can truly change lives and change families, and I know you guys will be working on that very closely. Gordy, I know you've got some stuff you'd like to touch on too.
What I enjoy, especially this time of year, is getting out and just seeing the great camaraderie with all the organizations. Talk about ABC, Lobby, Logan, all those groups, and talk about y'all's relationship and the network, if you will.
Absolutely. So you just named some big players in the trade association world, right? LCA is a trade association. LCIA is a trade association. LaMoga, LOGA, Lobby, ABC, all trade associations. And the way I would say is we have different memberships. We have different specific priorities. But we're all trying to advance the goal of making Louisiana better, right? We want to advance the goal of clear, predictable policy that is great for business, that is great for industry, and we want to attract more companies. We want to have more quality jobs. And although we represent different individuals and have different specific interests, we are all pushing the sled in the same way, right? We coordinate, from my perspective, I coordinate with all of those organizations on a daily, or if not daily, at least weekly basis as far as, hey, what's on your plate? How can I help? And they do the same with us. So, I mean, we work very frequently with ABC because of LCIA.
Let's make sure everybody knows Associated Builders and Contractors.
ABC. I'll go through the
Alphabet soup,
real quick.
alphabets.
LaMoga is Louisiana Mid-Continent Oil and Gas Association. They represent a lot of the upstream producers, many of whom overlap with our membership as well with LCA. ABC is Associated Builders and Contractors. They represent a ton of the members of our LCIA group. A lot of the contractors, a lot of the, like I said, boots on the ground, people getting it done. Lobby is Louisiana Association of Business and Industry, which is a much broader sort of all-encompassing business group. A lot of overlap there as well. And then LOGA is Louisiana Oil and Gas Association. They actually represent a lot of the drilling companies and smaller operators who work with the LaMoga folks. So it's all connected. We're all on the same team, and we really, 9 times out of 10 all support the same initiatives and push the same direction. So
Very nice.
So as we wrap up here, this has been a great conversation, great information. I appreciate your energy and your commitment to driving the ball forward for the Louisiana chemistry industry. Any last thoughts that you would leave the listeners and the viewers with in terms of the LCIA, where you're going, and the things that they can be looking for over the course of the next few months?
I would just say this. So I've been at LCA for 2.5 years, and it's been great. The movement of the organization, the things that we're trying to do over the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years, I'm really excited about it. I really am. And our members would say our 3 pillars for the Chemistry Association are science, sustainability, and progress. That's what we want going forward. We're going to be really involved in the local communities. We're going to do what we need to do at the state level in the coming months. But we really want to be an informational resource. We really want to push towards those 3 goals: science, sustainability, progress. All of our members want that. LCA wants that, and I'm really looking forward to the future.
Good stuff, my friend.
No, I appreciate that. Was the best breakdown of carbon capture I've heard. And I get the chemistry and the lore and all that was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a
Appreciate
blast.
everybody watching. And as a reminder, please, if you would, subscribe. Hit that subscribe number if you're watching us on YouTube. If you make a comment, anything like that, share it. Help get the good news, the word out, the good news that we're all about pushing Louisiana industry and business forward. This is the show for Louisiana. For Tim Johnson, appreciate you coming in. Patrick Riley, I'm Gordy Rush. This has been the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.